Obviously, we are watching very closely everything happening overseas right now after the horrific terrorist attacks on Israel over the weekend. And want to welcome on a guy who does a great job on this show and did a great job as well under the Trump administration, Mark Morgan, who, by the way, began his law enforcement career right here in Platte County. He worked his way up to being the acting commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection under the Trump administration. He joins us on KCMO, had a long career as well, FBI and elsewhere. He joins us. Mark, good morning. Thanks for joining us on KCMO. And based on what you've seen over the last few days, what's been your reaction?
I think, Pete, first of all, thanks for having me, and you've got a great memory, and you're right. I started out in Platte County. So, Pete, this is my first response that I've been telling people, is that what happened in Israel really should serve as a wake-up call with respect to the alarm that we've been sounding for a very long time in our own country, that border security is synonymous with national security. If anybody can take anything away from our conversation this morning and the horrendous terrorist attack, funneled by Iran, carried out by Hamas against, non-combatant civilians in Israel, people, we have to wake up, Pete. We have to. Here's what we know. So now the Middle East is a war once again. Global terrorism is alive and well, and clearly there was a significant intelligence failure. Why is that important? Because global terrorism, their unwavering commitment to continue to do harm to the United States is unwavering. Their commitment is still just as strong as it's ever been. And if anybody thinks that the intelligence community in the U.S. is infallible, you're living in a dream world. And right now, there's another great phrase out there that says, chaos and confusion provides opportunities for those wanting to do us harm to exploit it. And they have to look no further than our southwest border for that opportunity.
Well, it's so true. And I keep thinking about the fact that, we know there's at least, 150 individuals who are on the terrorist watch list who have infiltrated this country over the last couple of years. And that doesn't include the people we don't know who crossed our southern border. As we talk about border security in the wake of what happened on Saturday in Israel, I mean, I know it's incredibly concerning, but what now needs to be done on that front?
So, Pete, if I can, what you just said, you gave a couple of stats that are very, very critically important to this argument to show that border security is synonymous with national security and that our borders are completely chaotic and porous. So you talked about the number of people that have been identified. In the first 32 months of this administration, Border Patrol has apprehended 268 individuals on the terror watch list trying to illegally enter our country and avoid apprehension. Think about that. Last month alone, Border Patrol apprehended more individuals on the terrorist watch list in 1 month than the previous 4 years combined. We also have encountered people from 170 different countries. Many of those countries we know either facilitate or have ties to terrorist organizations. And if that's not enough, 1.6 million known gotaways. Think about that. That's why I say, and this isn't hyperbolic, we could have a sleeper cell in the United States planning the next large-scale terrorist attack, and we would have no idea. And one last thing I want to say, if anybody was paying attention yesterday, what's happened in the last 48 hours in New York, we actually have people in the United States that are sympathizing and supporting Hamas. They're not just talking about the dispute over land and who occupies. They were actually saying that Hamas's terrorist attacks against innocent civilians, women and children, was justified. Think about that. So now we have individuals, as we're supporting Israel, you think that sympathy for Hamas can't be exploited right here in our own country? Of course it can.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. Mark Morgan is joining us. He was, of course, ran ICE, U.S. Customs and Border Protection as well under President Trump. He began his law enforcement career here in the Kansas City area. I saw the videos. I know they've gone viral. People, as you noted, celebrating these attacks on the streets of New York City. And, I mean, think about that. You have thousands of people celebrating this in the nation's largest city, Mark Morgan. How many people aren't celebrating because they don't want people to know that they're in this country? For every, couple thousand folks out on the street celebrating, as you noted, how many people are planning something like this in the U.S., and what does the response need to be?
Exactly. And again, so when you have this unbelievable sympathy that justifies any means necessary, so there's sympathy for the plight of the Palestinian people in Gaza Strip and the West Bank. They are saying, people in our country are saying that any action, including actions by a confirmed terrorist organization against innocent civilians, was justified. Those are people in our own country, and you do not think that sympathy can't be exploited to carry out attack in the United States because we're sympathizing with Israel and we're going to support Israel in their attack against Hamas? Think about that, Pete. And what needs to happen is we need to wake up and understand that our borders are not secure and every aspect of our nation's safety and national security being jeopardized. We need to reverse course and we need to lock down our borders. If this didn't serve as a wake-up call, I'm afraid nothing will except maybe another large-scale terrorist attack, and many people are going to die before we realize this has been a colossal mistake.
You spent a large part of your career, Mark, in the FBI. I mean, what do you think the FBI, I'm sure you have some idea in terms of how they react to something like this here in the U.S. when it comes to not just trying to protect Jewish Americans. We know they're on high alert right now, but also all Americans. What does that look like today? How is it different from a week ago, if at all?
Two things that are very different. So the entire IC, intelligence community, FBI, across the board, right? They are on high alert. They're working 24/7 right now because clearly there was an intelligence failure. They either didn't have the intelligence they needed or they had it and failed to connect the dots. So that's a colossal failure. So right now, our intelligence community is scrambling to make sure that they're not missing something or they failed to connect the dots. Secondly, what I hope the FBI is doing is redirecting resources away from targeting parents at school board meetings and really going after the individuals that really count and understanding what that sympathy is in the United States to try to prevent that sympathy from exploiting that would relate to a terrorist attack here in the homeland for our support for Israel against a terrorist organization of Hamas that carried that out. But look, one thing that I learned when I was in Iraq, there are several takeaways, but one of my takeaway is that, look, you can kill as many terrorists as you want to, but it's impossible to kill an ideology. And that's what we have to realize. The ideology of global extremists, global terrorism is alive and well. They continue to want us to do us harm. We are living in a fantasy world to think that we've defeated that. We have not defeated the ideology. That's why we have to continue to lock down every vulnerability we have. And right now, our biggest vulnerability is our southern border.
Last thing, Mark, I don't want to, I'm not looking to scare this audience or anything like that, but I'm just curious. I mean, because this has been part of the conversation here in the last couple of days. What kind of attack, do you think we're most susceptible to right now in this country? I mean, is it kind of a guerrilla warfare tactic of what you saw in Israel? Is it biohazard? I mean, what is it that maybe we're not thinking of?
So I don't think we're going to be susceptible to a specific event like that happened in Israel. But here's what we are susceptible to individuals coming into our country that, again, are part of a global terrorist ideology that want to do us harm. So our biggest threat is allowing those individuals into the country that are going to exploit the sympathy and ideology of individuals here that will facilitate not only a homegrown violent extremist ideology that will relate to action. What that action could be, I don't know. It could be anything, Pete. I mean, It really runs the gamut. It could be a small scale, a series of attacks, or it could be a large scale attack. That's the unknown. That's what we don't know. And that's why I need to emphasize our intelligence community is not infallible. That what happened to Israel should have shown this. We've been lured into a false sense of security, thinking we know everything, we've connected all the dots, and we have that capability. The truth is we don't. With 1.6 million known gotaways, with individuals in the terrorist watch list that we've apprehended, God knows how many that we didn't apprehend. There is a lot we don't know and a lot of dots we haven't connected, and that's why I say the best way we can prevent this is to actually reverse course and secure our borders to eliminate those vulnerabilities. But
in the last 30 seconds, Mark, no confidence that's going to be happening here. I mean, the president's going to speak today, but I can't imagine that's going to be the takeaway from today's speech.
I totally agree with you. I think he's not going to mention our own border, and he's going to talk about our support with Ukraine to secure their borders. He's going to talk about our support with Israel to secure their borders, but he will not mention one word about our own borders and the vulnerabilities right now that we have as a nation with respect to our national security because of the chaos at our own borders.
Mark Morgan, former acting commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Always great to have him on KCMO and in the Kansas City area where he began his law enforcement career.